Okay, MegaWhale team, welcome back to the channel and thank you for tuning in. I hope you're all having a fantastic day today. Bitcoin has rejected from the 110,000 critical level of resistance, as well as broken down from that daily uptrend on the RSI, spanning back since around about the 6th of June, so about 1 week. With this breakdown, we have now run the risk of seeing a weekly candle close back underneath the RSI downtrend, confirming the bearish divergence, and the weekly range high, the range high sitting at 109,000. Will this breakdown at 110,000 be enough to send Bitcoin back into a downtrend? Are we going to break through this resistance and then continue to new highs? And how is the short-term price action developing? These are questions we're going to be answering in the video today. We'll also briefly go over the total cryptocurrency and total altcoin market cap, the recent economic news, and maybe even touch on Ethereum. Let's go ahead, guys, and jump in. Before we do that, go ahead and smash that like button, hit that comment button, and subscribe to the channel. We post daily videos of Bitcoin focusing on the facts, the data, the technical, and the structural information. No hype, no BS, no emotion, just pure raw TA. If that is the kind of content you are interested in, you can also join us on Telegram. That is the first link down below. You'll get access to charts, updates, videos, educational posts, news events, and everything you need to stay in the loop with cryptocurrency with Bitcoin and the relevant economic news. And if you were interested in taking your trading to the next level, join us in VIP by clicking the pinned comment. You can find out all information of how to join, our trading track records, and even a 10-minute video showing you inside the channel by clicking that pinned comment. Check it out. We'd love to have you in there. Let's jump on in. So as we can see, guys, 110,000 US dollars being that the last level of major resistance for Bitcoin before we enter this low historical resistance range for the upside and a new all-time high, potentially 115, even 120,000. This level, that last line of defense, has rejected from. We have seen rejection from this region now, not only pushing Bitcoin back below these local lows at 108,000. If you watched our video, our prior Bitcoin video, you would know that we were expecting a potential correction down to around 108,000, which we have now seen. But we have also seen with that the breakdown on that RSI uptrend. So we're going to be discussing today what this recent correction means. Are we going to potentially see the price action continue to drop down, or are we going to see the price reverse from here? Is this the end of the correction from that 110 level? And is this the beginning of a reversal upwards and hopefully into a new all-time high? We'll also be discussing the relevant charts on the weekly, discussing, of course, the RSI to 62.09, the weekly range high, and macro projections, as well as the other relevant charts. Let's jump into the market data, 24-hour volume and liquidation. Let's jump into it. Volume and liquidations slightly down. Volume at 281 billion, so not very low, but not very high, down 7%. Liquidations down 12.8%, 298 million over here, with 200 million coming from longs and 96 million coming from shorts. Of course, we did have the recent economic news come out, which was, of course, the CPI data. The CPI data, guys, was actually better than forecasted. So it doesn't pop up over here, but we actually saw CPI. If I go ahead and refresh the page really quickly, I believe we saw CPI come in a little bit better. We can see over here the month-on-month inflation rate came in at 0.1, where the previous was 0.2, so a whole 0.% down under. We also saw inflation rate month-on-month come down by 0.1. We saw year-on-year push up a little bit, and year-on-year core push up a little bit, well, hold the same. Not too much of a change over here, but the real big ones is that month-on-month inflation is coming down and was actually quite lower than those forecasts. So a relatively bullish result here for CPI. In terms of expectations for future interest rate decisions, The current is 425 to 450. That is still going to be the target for this Federal Reserve press conference, meaning they are expecting a pause, and a pause at the moment is going to be more likely. So we're not expecting anything different to a pause, but what is going to be interesting is going to be interesting how they discuss their plans going forward now that we have seen inflation come back down a little bit, which is a good sign. Are we going to see the Federal Reserve be more bullish? Are we going to see them hint towards earlier interest rate cuts, or are they going to, I guess, clear up some of the uncertainty surrounding their future economic policy and decisions surrounding those interest rate decisions? So be interesting to see how that develops, of course. And that is always going to be a major driver of the market. Moving over to the S&P 500 and the DXY. The DXY dropping toward the downside, of course, as CPI does drop. We are expecting continuations down to this 93 to 92 range over the next 6 to 12 months. Again, provided we sustain below that 100 level, that is going to be the expectation. Depending on what happens with interest rates will massively sway how quickly this is going to move to that target area. The S&P 500 is looking good. Again, while we remain above that breaker structure, so around $6,000, we are expecting continuations. However, we can see here on the daily chart, we do have a possible bearish divergence developing, signifying that we are running into a little bit of exhaustion in this uptrend over here. The big question is, are we able to absorb that absorption, or are we going to see a breakdown? Again, watching that uptrend here on the RSI. So watching whether or not this breaks or bounces. If we see that RSI break down here, that could be a sign that we are going to spill over back into that 50 EMA. Again, if we absorb and continue through breaking this downtrend on the RSI, we will very likely move into these prior highs. Again, we aren't expecting too much to happen here for the S&P until we have that interest rate decision. So that is really going to be the main driver of this price action. With that being said, guys, let's jump into Bitcoin. We're going to be taking a look at the short term, the macro, the daily, the targets, the key levels, the total market cap, and even Ethereum. So before we get into all that, guys, go ahead and sign up to BitGet, BitUnix, or BingX, the exchange links down below. You'll get a lifetime trading fee discount of 15%, which can build up to 45% based on your trading volume. You'll go to support me making this content on a daily basis. You'll support yourself by trading on exchanges I trust, and you'll get those hefty bonuses. Go ahead and check it out. We'll play an ad, and we'll get stuck back in. If you are looking for a new exchange or just want to support the channel, sign up to BitUnix with the link down below. You'll get a lifetime trading fee discount of 15%, which can build up to 45% based on your trading volume, as well as access to a bonus reward center, and of course, all of the exclusive campaigns we run on this exchange. You'll also get access to BitUnix being a non-KYC exchange, meaning you can sign up from anywhere in the globe without regulations. And most importantly, I only promote exchanges I trust and I use. As you can see, I trade on BitUnix very regularly, being the highest VIP level with over $500 million in trading volume for the last 30 days. And lastly, if you were interested in signing up to our other two exchanges, BingX or BitGet, you can also do that via the links down below. You as well will get the 15% trading fee discount and everything else that comes with it. Go ahead and sign up. Thank you for supporting. Let's jump back in. Hey legends, let's go ahead and get right back into it. So as we can see, rejection from 110. Now, the cryptocurrency market, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all at pretty critical levels. So 110 is really going to be that major level of resistance. I'm calling the last line of resistance that Bitcoin is going to have to break through if we want to see the next major leg up for the cryptocurrency market. That is going to result in altcoins flying. That is going to result in Ethereum breaking over 3,000. That is going to result in Bitcoin pushing to new all-time highs. So very quickly, looking at that 110 level, we can see Bitcoin at 110. We can see the total altcoin and cryptocurrency market cap both at critical levels. The total cryptocurrency market cap just below these most recent May highs, and of course Ethereum sitting at that critical level of resistance at 2,800. We discussed that level in yesterday's video on our second channel. If you're not already in the know, you can find our second channel again in the description down below. We do occasional videos on Ethereum, or you can just go to our Telegram channel and click the link to watch it. So if you're interested in finding more about that 2,800 level, you can go ahead and watch that video. But for the purpose of today's video, what I'm showing you is that the entirety of the crypto market, whether it be altcoins, whether it be Bitcoin, whether it be Ethereum, is just below a major level of resistance. And that major level of resistance isn't just a point of resistance. It is literally going to be the last level of resistance before we see large market moves toward the upside for the broader market, not only Bitcoin, but Ethereum and altcoins as well. So what have we seen over the last couple hours? Over the last few hours here, our last day and a half, we've seen Bitcoin reject from 110,000. Now, as we mentioned in our prior video, rejections from 110,000 were very likely. We actually said that we were expecting a correction down to 108,000, and we also mentioned that just because we see a correction, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is bearish. Sometimes corrections are actually healthy, allows the price to reset, particularly if we're absorbing that selling pressure before we develop new supports and allow the price to continue upwards. So the worry isn't that we have rejected from 110. The worry here is if we do not establish and reverse from a local support before we come back down to this level of support at 107. So as we can see here on the VRPV over here, we had a gap in the VRPV that was sitting at around that $108,000 mark. If we draw a horizontal ray from that, you can see smack bang in the middle, we came back down and tested 108,000 exactly as we predicted in our video 2 days ago. So what we can see here on the short term, if we zoom in, Bitcoin has now established a short-term support. We've come back down to retest this short-term support now at just above 108,000, around 108.3 to 108.4. This is going to be a critical level of support and essentially is the last line of support before we then run the risk of correcting back to 106.8 to 106.4, that major level of resistance. Remember, we were underneath for about a 2-week period before we see that large rally up to 110. If we fail to hold the current support 108,000, we run the risk of correcting back to that level. Now, we already know that if we were to correct back to that level, we then run the risk of closing this weekly candle out bearish. So we need to discuss that as well. We'll come back to that. So let's go back to the short-term price action. So for now, support is support until it is not. Provided this level is able to sustain a support, we expect reversals back to 110 to develop a horizontal consolidation before we then hopefully break upwards and see continuations through. So we do have the chance here to develop a nice horizontal consolidation where the selling pressure will be absorbed and the price can then continue through that range high and thus into a new all-time high. Before this to develop, we need to hold this range low. This is going to be deviation from the range at the moment, meaning we cannot drop back below the sell side liquidity at 108,000. So 108,000 is going to be acting as the bearish trigger where if we break down, we would then expect the price to continue as potentially as low as 106.5, most likely to around 107,000. Into this lowermost point of support. If we are looking at the downtrend we have been in ever since we rejected from the most recent top at 110, we can draw a downtrending diagonal trend line in, and what we can also map out on the RSI is a respective downtrend in the RSI. As we can see, both the price action and the RSI is getting very, very close to a break of its current trend, whether it be a downtrend in the respective momentum or a downtrend in the price action. We need to see both of these things occur, a breakout the RSI and a breakout the trend, to be confident that this is bottom that we've just produced here is going to sustain and we will see a continuation upwards. Now, hopefully by the time you watch this video, we've either seen a breakout or we have seen a rejection, but do note, if we reject from this trend line and the RSI, we do run the risk of correcting back to 108, which will increase the probability for a correction back into this critical level of support. So as you can tell already, what happens here at 108,000 is going to determine whether or not we are able to reverse back to 110, okay, and thus see a breakout, all-time high, Ethereum continuing upwards, the altcoin market continuing upwards, or if we break through 1.8, we will see a continuation back to this support. So that is the short term, guys. We're going to go ahead and remove these orange arrows on the moment really quickly, draw this out one more time to make it nice and clear, delete everything. We have a nice horizontal range developing around about this region, okay? We have got that deviation from the low side, we have deviation high side, rejection, support, okay, support, And then we had the deviation on the bottom side. This is a very, very clear deviation confirmed and a very clear sell side liquidity level. Now, I don't know if an alert just went off on my computer. If it did, I apologize for that. Of course, as you know, I'm a day trader, so I do have alerts going off every now and again. I'm not entirely sure if that made a noise because my computer is on mute. If it did, I do apologize. Let's move upwards over here. We can see with that breakout on the RSI occurring, the probabilities are now going to be in favor for at least a move to the midline. We break the midline, the range high. We break the range high. That is going to be a measured move target. Okay, so the depth of the channel applied to the breakout, looking at least 112,000. So that is what needs to happen for Bitcoin to go up. If we see this play out for Bitcoin, we will, as a consequence, see the total cryptocurrency market continue back up to 3.5 trillion, which is going to be this upper level of resistance. We will likely see Ethereum break through or attempt to break through 2,800, which can result in a rally to 3,300. And of course, for the altcoin market, we'll of course as well see the altcoin market continue upwards. The critical level of support for altcoins in the moment is going to be sitting at 856 billion, which is this orange line I'm drawing on right now. This is going to be the lower high right over here. Even if we come back down, perfectly fine if we come back down, but we cannot drop below that level. And if we are able to sustain above, we are expecting rallies to 940. So you can see how the market is kind of setting up these dominoes to fall over in a perfect way just to bring the market up through this resistance. All very well talking about the bullish case scenario. As we've just mentioned, horizontal consolidation, absorption, deviation setup, RSI breakout, potential rally to 112. But what happens if all of that fails? What happens if Bitcoin does not sustain above this support? Well, as we mentioned, we would see a correction to 1680. What does that mean for Bitcoin? Well, moving to the weekly chart, we're not out of the woods yet. We're looking fantastic, but if we close out bearish, and the probability of closing out bearish would increase if we saw this correction play out, we do still run the risk of a breakdown of the 62.09. We do still run the risk of dropping below this weekly range high, which could result in a higher time frame correction towards the 50 EMA. So these are still risks. However, the probability of these risks playing out become already exceptionally low, but become exceptionally low as we sustain above 1.8 and most importantly 106. Okay, so we drop back to 106. We do run the risk of those bearish indicators starting to pop off again, but while we sustain above, we're looking very healthy on the high time frame. And particularly if we are able to flip this consolidation toward the upside and break upwards, we are very much going to have a nice rally to 112 for Bitcoin. So that is today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. The most important thing we're really talking about today is this range, it's consolidation and the implications this has on the higher time frame. So make sure to lock in, pay attention. I look forward to seeing you in tomorrow's video. Can't wait to see you then. Bye.